Starting a business is tough. Starting a one-person business is even more challenging in a lot of ways. So now think about right there at the beginning, as you're starting this thing, especially if you're new to the industry and you don't have a whole lot of a following or any credibility. Today, I'm going to share with you a simple trick to instantly become more credible as a brand new one-person business. And that's the thing, is like getting people to actually take you seriously or actually subscribe, maybe even purchase something. Whoa, the crazy to think about, is nearly impossible when you have no following, especially if you've never had an offering that you've been promoting up to this point or any content backlog that helps position you in the marketplace. It's this really weird catch-22 that you're like really where you need experience and a following to be considered credible, but you need to build up your business and content output in order to gain that experience and following. It is exactly a catch-22 that all of us in the beginning stages of anything, especially as a solo business owner, you're jumping in right into the deep end. It's hard. It's just really hard. It feels like you're just kind of swimming against the current or trying to fight this uphill battle while, it just feels like, you just really have no wind at your back, nothing really helping you along. It makes me think of that same conundrum where you need experience to get the job, but you need a job to get experience. And it's like, all right, how am I supposed to make any sense of any of this? What am I supposed to be doing? Well, like I said, I've got a trick that's going to help you appear a lot more legit and credible, especially in the content that you're producing. I like to talk a lot about content creation, content marketing, social media marketing, and how that can help us as solo business owners and operators. So here's the simple approach. I will just give you the goods right here off the top of the episode today, and then I will back it up and kind of go into more depth of why this can work so well and kind of get your gears turning on how you could apply this for yourself. Here's the trick. Use other people's content to back up the points that you're making with your content. There it is. Use other people's stuff, repurpose it as yours, and then use it. But I am going to share how you can do this in a very legitimate way that retains your integrity. And this is what you could be doing with your content is you can be screenshotting other people's tweets and posts to validate the point that you're making in your, let's say, newsletter or your blog. And not only that, but you can also use quotes from other thought leaders and then reshare stories that were originally shared by someone else. And I was trying to come up with like a term or just look to see like what is this called? And the closest thing that I could think of is UGC. And but it's kind of done differently. This is like a unique spin on UGC, but UGC stands for user generated content. This is a marketing approach that we've been seeing a lot of lately. And really the idea of UGC, to quickly explain it, think about like you're scrolling Instagram and you see some dude with like an electric razor and he's just shaving away and he's like, I love this razor. It's freaking awesome. It never dulls out on me. The battery on it is great, whatever it may be, just kind of talking about some of the features and benefits of it. And then that's their post. That's what they put up online as a reel or some sort of carousel post, whatever it may be. They may or may not have been contacted by that razor brand before posting that. And, regardless, basically, it's content that's promoting that electric razor, this product, this brand that wasn't originally created by the brand themselves. A user generated that content, and now it can be leveraged and repurposed by the brand for their marketing, and it just adds this social proof, this social credibility element. So that's user-generated content, but I think that this is a unique twist because we're kind of looking at it from the content marketing side at a little bit of a different angle applied for us as newly beginning, just starting out solo business owners and operators. And like I said earlier, there's this huge caveat that I have to address right here off the get-go so that you're not thinking like, wow, Evan, he's very slimy and manipulative and he doesn't care who he stomps on to become successful. That's not true at all. Like, one of the biggest things in the world is integrity and upholding that. And it seems like sometimes it can feel like it's really hard to find or non-existent in certain spaces, which makes it that much more valuable. This is all about just being a good human. And the more that you can kind of reflect being a good human in your business as well, the more success you're going to have over time. So I repeat, I am not suggesting that you just haphazardly steal from others and then pretend that it's yours and use it all on your own. Okay, we're not doing the plagiarizing thing here at all. And kind of on that point, as a little bit of an aside or like a side note to this whole topic today, I heard this cool thing, and it wasn't too long ago, and it was really talking about the difference between brand reputation and brand persona. And I think this is worth mentioning here because it kind of it laces in really well with this whole idea of, you know, how people see you and the integrity that we need to uphold as people and as brands, especially one-person brands. So quick definition of like the difference between persona and reputation. You could call brand persona, you could kind of label it this as this. It's the identity that you aim to carve out for yourself. It's the thing that you can control. Whereas with brand reputation, it's the perception of what others see you to be. And this is not something that you can fully control. You can't control how people see you. You can't control what they think. You can control how you present yourself. You can fully control your actions and behaviors. But your audience will ultimately make their own judgments of you based on how you present yourself and your values. So then the net average of that really then becomes your reputation. And obviously we know this is not a news flash. We know how quickly reputations can be destroyed, and we know how long it takes to build a reputation that we would be proud of. And so we have to pay a lot of attention to weaving integrity and really upholding our values as people in our brands, especially as one-person brands. Very, very important. And whether you've got like a separate brand identity that isn't like your name, you know, like for me online, I'm Evan Shank, and that's kind of like there's a personal brand element, a huge element of that to my business. And so it's like it's very obvious that those things would be intertwined. But for some of you that maybe you're starting up some sort of SaaS product on the side, or you have whatever it may be, it could be anything, honestly. But if it doesn't have your name specifically on it, that brand is going to it will have some sort of identity. And it's likely that the identity of the brand is going to align with the identity of you as a person, even though your name and your face isn't on the front of the brand or like baked into the logo or the brand name. So values are very important. And one of the values here that we continue to put out there and try to cultivate and bring out the best of in one another is integrity. Okay. So I think I've made that very clear. Here's the thing. If we do this whole topic of what I'm talking about today, this unique twist on UGC and how we can appear more credible by leveraging other people's thoughts, ideas, and content, if we can do this with an integrity-first approach, there's a lot to be gained with this unique twist on UGC. Here are the 3 distinct advantages to embedding UGC into your content. Number 1, your content will expand. And speaking of expanding, I'm going to expand on all of these 3 benefits throughout the rest of this episode. And I have a bonus tip for you, a 4th one there towards the end of the episode. So make sure you stick around for the remainder of this whole entry that we've got for you today. A lot of value packed in here. But number 1, your content will expand. Number 2, your connections will grow. And number 3, you'll build audience trust a lot quicker. And obviously, trust is so important, and integrity plays into that, and just being honest with not only ourselves, but definitely the rest of the people out there in the world. So we're going to look at the rest of this entry and expand on those 4 benefits so that we can start to actually put some pieces together of how this could work for you in your business so that you can appear more credible and have some more ideas with your content. You're going to be able to jam off of other people's ideas, which then in turn sparks new ideas and new conversations, which really this bleeds us perfectly into the first benefit. Your content will expand. I've talked a lot, and I'm going to continue to, on the topic of content ideas and how to come up with more of them, mainly because it's a huge problem for many in our solo business niche, whatever industry you're in, all of us solo business people. You know, it's hard to juggle it all, number 1. and just to have like the ideas ready to go, to know what to post about, how to put stuff out that's going to matter to your target audience and also promote the business at the same time. We need to be posting as much content as possible. We all know this. We have to be posting a ton in order to effectively promote ourselves and the brands that we alone are building. And so this UGC spin-off approach is a fantastic way to help you expand your existing content and new content, the new content idea bank, we'll call it that, this idea bank of new content that you could be working on. The new angles you'll be able to bring to your content will grow due to the fresh perspectives that you're including from this UGC. In doing so, you'll become more aware of other people's takes on these topics, leaving you more informed in the end. The more we understand a topic or a subject, and as well as how people are perceiving it, what their pain points are, where there's contention, where there's conflicting thoughts, and it seems like two things are true at the same time. Once you understand the landscape of what people's opinions are on these things, and you also understand the topic pretty well, now you're going to inevitably have a lot of ideas. And as these other perspectives are embedded into your content, you'll also find the benefit of fresh ideas popping up in your brain too. Not only will you be sparking new ideas for them, which then opens this feedback loop, both of you guys, all of the people in this communication circle, if you will, you and then your audience, you're gonna be able to kind of riff off of each other in a good way. When we surround ourselves with content put out by other professionals in the space, it gets our brain firing in a way that tends to generate new ideas or new solutions to common problems. The problems don't go away. They kind of change over time because the landscape changes, tech changes, there's new products, there's new tools, there's new things that aim to solve a problem. But if the problem still persists or new problems arise from it, it's kind of our job as businesses to solve those problems. And the better you are at solving problems, the more money you're going to make, the bigger your business will become, and you will obviously be able to climb up the mountain, your personal mountain of success. So all of this plays quite well, not only on the expansion of your content, but the expansion of your mind as well. So this approach is all about expansion. That's one of the huge benefits here. And as a side effect, this is not something that directly happens on purpose, but because of this effort that you're putting in like using and applying other people's content and ideas into yours, your writing or delivery style, depending on whether you're putting out written content or audible content like I'm doing right here with this video podcast, it will become more conversational by proxy. Like that's just going to happen because you're playing off of someone else's thoughts on the topic as well. So you're not just giving some monologue type spiel where you're just trying to back up your own ideas and that's it, and you're using your own thoughts that prove the overall gist of that entry or that newsletter or whatever it may be. It becomes more conversational because you're saying, hey, I agree with this other person, here's what they said, or hey, I disagree with what they said because of this, and this is what I'd consider, or maybe got to look at it from this angle, whatever it may be. I know I'm being kind of vague in how I'm displaying this, but it just keeps this conversational element involved in your content, which we know if you start looking at like retention graphs, this type of communication style dramatically helps with viewer retention, as well as just keeping them engaged longer past that content. You're starting to build some trust, which we're going to talk on in a little bit. And who doesn't want that? So, huge benefit. Your content will expand by applying other people's ideas, thoughts, and posts, and applying those to what you're creating and what you're putting out there in the world. The other huge benefit, number 2, is that your connections are going to grow. And I really love this one. This might be the most obvious benefit, but involving other people's content and yours is a great way to build new connections. This is very similar to hosting a podcast that has new guests on it every single episode. You think about, I'll just use the stupidly obvious example of Joe Rogan. I don't even know how many thousands of episodes he has now. And yeah, he has repeat people on there here and there, but I mean, over the course of thousands of episodes, he's spoken with thousands of different people. That's awesome. Your connections grow. Now, this applies way past just the podcasting, like having the guest and then having the host, that whole format or framework for podcast episodes. Just by embedding other people's content into yours and allowing it to be used, it opens up the door for this networking effect. It's kind of already baked in as a positive byproduct of the effort that you're putting in to do this. And if you're anything like me, this has been a glaring problem for me. I'm opening up right now. I'm just letting you know about your boy Evan and some of the faults, failures, or struggles that I have. But since day one in my solo business journey, this has been a really tough one for me. And it was, I felt inferior. I didn't feel like I had become successful enough or had proved my legitimacy enough to be able to DM other people, other professionals in the space. And honestly, like, this is still an issue for me today. I'm working on it. I'm getting over it. And this whole approach of what we're talking about in this episode really helps me. And it's kind of just this battle against our own imposter syndrome. And I thought this was interesting. It's just kind of the timing of it all, because I was on Twitter, and I'm on and off with Twitter. I'm not really sure. Part of me wants to love it. And then part of me is just like, I don't know. Like, it feels like a square peg, round hole situation. I just feel like I can't be on there as much as is required. But anyway, I digress. I'm off and on. But I was on Twitter the other day, and I saw somebody, MIDI HQ, MIDEE HQ, at MIDI Notion, is his handle. And I saw this, and so I replied to it, and I want to share it with you. He had said, "How do you honestly deal with imposter syndrome?" And so I replied back, and it was kind of like me giving advice to myself, but just sharing it publicly and obviously directly to MIDI Notion here. I said, recognize that imposter syndrome rarely goes away fully. We all feel our insecurities, and our ego lies to us by convincing us that people can see right through it. They can see right through us and all of the things that we're feeling. Be open about your intentions and be honest with the world as to why you have those intentions. What are your aspirations? All of that. Be open and honest about that. And that imposter feeling will start to quiet down. And that was kind of my advice. And, I got like a, hey, good idea or good thoughts. I appreciate it type of reply back. But imposter syndrome, which is not the topic of today's episode, but it's something that we pretty much all deal with in our own way. And when you're getting started, which that is kind of my target audience, and that's who I'm trying to build connection with, are those in the beginning stages of a solo journey, or kind of doing their research and just kind of absorbing content in hopes that maybe they'll jump ship from whatever career they're in to finally go full-time into their own one-person business. That's the community that we're building here. And so it's super real for all of us. We're all feeling that in some capacity. But the benefit of building new human connections with others in your niche is huge. Like, I can't speak to how powerful this is, especially, like I said, one-person businesses who can often just bury themselves in work at the expense of expanding their network. I'll say that again. A lot of times, us one-person businesses, like for me, I work from home. I'm recording this here in an extra bedroom in my house. This is a home office / content studio setup that I have here, and it would be so easy for me. And I have for honestly many years now at this point convinced myself that, like, okay, you don't need to worry about networking as much because it's a one-person business. Like, you have to get stuff done. You're wearing a lot of hats. Like, focus on that. Like, networking and trying to build up your following on Twitter and having people retweet your stuff and like building your connections on LinkedIn. I just kind of convinced myself that wasn't really important. but obviously it is in its own right, and it's different for every single person. So you gauge it for yourself. But it's very easy for us to make this excuse like, okay, well, I've got to work on product development. I've got to work on customer service. I've got to work on cleaning up the marketing. I've got to refresh this portion of the website, or whatever it is. Or you're just on social media to like position yourself in the marketplace. So, you're just trying to market your brand, as opposed to build connections in the whole traditional networking sense. But it's really valuable. And the thing is, like, the more, and I found this as my experience, and I'm a little bit off script here, but it totally applies to this point of the more that you talk to people, the more that I'll just use the term network, the more you spend time creating connections virtually over the internet, whether social media, email, whatever it may be. There's this sense of confidence, I suppose, that starts to build up when you realize like, oh, yeah, I know I have all my issues or like my own like struggles that I have internally, this whole imposter syndrome thing, but like these other people, they're really cool people. Like, and maybe they're 10 years further in business, and maybe they've done hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars more in their business than I have. And maybe they do have this huge podcast that's getting tens of thousands of listeners every single month, whereas my podcast gets 2 or whatever it may be. Like, yes, that all may be true. And that's awesome, because here's the thing. You're able to start to break down those fears really quickly when you realize, oh, they're just a person also. They're a human also. And now that we've had a couple email exchanges, or we had a Zoom call and or talked on the phone or whatever, like now it feels like a friend. I have a new friend and they're much further along. And so I'm excited for them. I'm cheering for their success. And now they're aware of me and they're cheering for my success too. It starts to make you feel like, you know what, dang it, I do deserve a place in this niche, in this space. I do deserve the time to be able to share my content with people, and it's this very empowering thing. And then all of a sudden you're that less fragile about it internally, but also that much more confidently. You kind of walk with your shoulders out and your chest out, you're just like, you walk tall, literally and figuratively, through into the next connection that you make. And the more conversations you have, the more perspective you get from other people, and then your confidence continues to build. It's this huge, super awesome compound effect. And here's the thing too, like, especially when you're starting out, I know I continue to preface that and say that, but that's who I'm talking to here. When you're starting out, you don't have to pull content from ultra known people, kind of getting back on track with using UGC in your content as you're building up audience and building up a pool of content backlog. You don't have to pull content from ultra known people. And honestly, I would suggest that you find people that are just, maybe a few steps or a few chapters ahead of where you're at currently. And these would, I guess you could call them like micro influencers or whatever term you want to use. But what's cool about leveraging the other small accounts that, are like, say you're starting at 0 and you reach out to somebody who has 1,500 followers on Twitter or whatever, or you screenshot something from them and then you reach out to say, hey, I'm going to use some of this in my newsletter. I just want to let you know, like, I like the thoughts that you're putting out, so on and so forth. Like, they're not huge. I mean, there's people out there with hundreds of thousands of followers. So it's very likely that this person with 1,500 in this arbitrary example, they're probably going to see your DM and they're probably going to reply. Some of them do, some of them don't. But that's the thing. Like, it's much easier to make the connection if you're only going a couple rungs up the ladder, as opposed to being somebody who's just brand new, that has no followers, we'll say that, or less than 100 or whatever. And I'm kind of like, I'm not a big influencer. I don't have much of a following, truthfully. Like, if you're listening to this or watching this, like on YouTube, you can look at the view count, and on the podcast, like, my voice is falling only on a few ears right now. I don't have the exact numbers, but it's not that many. So if I reach out to somebody with 2 times or 3 times as much, like, they're still micro influencers, but it allows me to build that connection with them. And it's super awesome. Last week, I think it was last week, I had used a piece from this guy on Twitter. His handle is Notion Dad. His name's Will. And now we're both subscribers of each other's newsletter. So like, now we're cheering for each other and we're aware of each other, and we've had some email exchanges. We're both young dads. So we're able to talk about that, and it's just really cool. And yeah, like sometimes you feel like you have to reach out to these huge accounts so that you can get the exposure or whatever, like you're trying to do that. And yeah, like for instance, like Justin Welsh, if I were to use a piece from Justin Welsh or Dan Coe, there's a lot of people out there that are just very notable names in this one-person business solopreneur space, especially like digital business space. I could do that and it would look credible because I'm using Dan Coe's like really cool quote from a few weeks ago to back up and legitimize what I'm saying maybe in my email newsletter or blog. But I don't really, it's the likelihood that he's going to like reply back to me and then we have an exchange and all of a sudden we're friends. The likelihood's a lot smaller because just like with famous people, they're getting asked for autographs and they're being asked for favors all the time, to the point where it's just kind of like it's falling on some deaf ears in a sense. And that's not a knock to the people. It's just that's where they're at. Like they've become so successful. Or at least in the sense of they have so much attention on them. Their accounts are larger on social media, on their newsletter subscriber lists, things like that, where, yeah, it might help you build credibility. But if you reach out to some of the smaller accounts that are just a few rungs up the ladder, like I said, ahead of you, there's a chance for a real friendship. And that could work out really, really, really well, not only for you, but maybe for them too. So that's kind of like, that's like the icing on the cake with this one. And so you're going to be able to, you'll end up like this whole idea of building new connections. And that's one of the like side benefits of this using UGC in your content. You're going to end up with new friends and connections that can give you honest feedback on your business struggles. They kind of become like cheerleaders for you in the background. You can reach out to them if you're like facing some sort of issue, some sort of stumbling block, some sort of thing that like where you feel like the rug got pulled out from under you and you don't know how to navigate this new issue. You have people that have been and are in the trenches with you in real time, giving you feedback from their perspective. And these people potentially are further along the road than you, like I said, so that can work out well. Another advantage of that is they can give you a testimonial or critiques on products. Like before you release it to the public, you now have a little bit of a Rolodex of people, or a contact list. I don't know if people use the term Rolodex. I guess I don't even really know what that is. It makes me think maybe it is the Rolodex. It's like the old school where it was like note cards and it's on a wheel and you like spin it from the side. And it like, that's really hard to explain. I don't know. Anyway, contact list. I think that's what Rolodex kind of means. Let me know in the comments if I'm just completely losing it or not. If you're on YouTube, we got comments, on Spotify. Just, don't judge me too hard if I'm sounding stupid, but you have not only the honest feedback from people that understand the business, because they're doing it too, but now you can get some pretty credible testimonials and critiques. Like I said, you can cross promote your content and your offers to their audience potentially. So now you're able to leverage each other's success to kind of build up your own. And this is just kind of like why should one of us win when we can all win? How can we promote win-win scenarios and solutions? That's incredible. And then they're going to cheer for you. They're going to vouch for you. Like if they ever hear your name coming up from some other source, and maybe somebody's asking a question like, hey, I saw this person's product. I wasn't really sure about it. If you've made a connection with that other person, they're going to vouch for you and be like, yeah, you should go check out Evan's stuff or whatever. Like he's a cool dude. Like, whatever, or check out the content and then you'll kind of see the type of person he is and see if you want to purchase that thing. So new connections. It's freaking awesome. And that's just on the remote, like digital side of the friendship. I've met up for beers and hung out with new friends that I met through the internet and we've made shared content together before. We've had each other on podcasts. We've done that kind of stuff. And then even, it's turned into a real life friendship, like person to person. Actually gave him a hug and a handshake and, clanked a beer glass with him. And that was awesome. So the beauty of the internet is vast, and this is just one of those cool advantages. And I think something worth mentioning is that as you put in the reps, and I'm just going to kind of repeat this for a second, as you put in the reps and start making the new connections, the whole thing is that compound effect that flywheel starts to spin up of just confidence and like realizing we're all human. We're all just trying to make a name for ourselves. We're trying to build a brand. We're trying to support our families. We're trying to build business because we love it, number one, and because we see a problem and we have a solution, and therefore it's on us to, get that out to the world so that we can solve people's problems. So your network grows, your confidence builds, you reach out to more people, you feel comfortable to comment more online and on bigger accounts. The more that people see you, which then starts to grow your network even more, which builds up more confidence, on and on and on and on and on. You're starting to win. And this is an easy first step to putting yourself out there in a way that truly helps everyone. It helps you, it helps the other professionals because you're sharing their content to your audience, and it's helping your audience by showing other perspectives and validating certain points so that they can start to trust that what you say is true and that like you bring good perspective, you bring good insight. And this leads us perfectly into point number 3, and that is you're going to quickly build trust from your audience when you use other people's ideas, thoughts, and content, and you bake that into the content that you create. In the same vein of connection building from the previous point, there's also a huge benefit to be had with your audience from incorporating outside content into yours. It's a lot of trust building, and we know that that's the bedrock of everything. It's the foundation. It's no surprise that trust is the backbone of all things when it comes to your relationship with your audience. People follow, support, and buy from other people or brands that they trust, that they feel they can trust. They want to find people and brands that are projecting their values that align with their values. That was kind of a weird way to say it. Like, do you buy from brands that seem off to you? Like, and I'm using air quotes if you're not watching the video version of this, but do you buy from brands that seem off to you? Like for some people, and I'm not going to project as to which side I stand on. It's probably pretty clear if you've watched some of my content, but like right now, like Anheuser-Busch, with all of the Bud Light controversy that's gone on, and like they lost billions, if I'm not mistaken, billions of dollars in revenue, like seemingly overnight. Now I'm not quoting that as a stat or whatever, but like it just like they just went through quite a bit of a big debacle, and like they were in an effort to support one group or one type of people that have a certain set of values. They really alienated and lost a ton of trust with this whole other side, these other people that have a different set of values, to a degree, to a large degree, but people are people. There's, I think more often than not, we have a lot more in common with one another than we realize, but polarizing topics become, the bedrock of conversation, or not bedrock, but, they become the conversation point a lot of times. And then all of a sudden you feel like you have nothing in common with certain people or certain groups, whereas that's typically not true. As people, our opinions are constantly changing and evolving, and I'm going completely off the topic of what we're here to talk about today, but like you want to align with people that seem to share similar, if not identical values to you. That's just how it is. So if you don't agree with what Bud Light did with their recent marketing and who they were trying to lift up and support, if you didn't agree with that and it didn't align with your values, like, well, there you go. Like as you were seeing all over the internet, people like dumping all of their Bud Light down the drain and just publicly vowing to never purchase from that company again, and so the same is true for us here. But it seems a little counterintuitive on the surface, but pulling in other people's perspectives into your content shows your audience a few things. It shows that you're not an egocentric human. It's not all about you. You're not saying me, here's my content, here's my thoughts, this is why I think that you should agree with me. There's a lot of I type of language and a lot of me-ness in there. It also shows your audience when you do this UGC approach, it also shows your audience that you're willing to share the spotlight with others. It shows that you're prioritizing the reader by bringing in perspectives that better contextualize the content. Once again, it's not just your words. You're bringing in other people's words to help kind of make a stronger case in point for whatever content it is that you're trying to put out there. And then it also shows your audience that you're demonstrating qualities of leadership, honestly, because you're not posturing yourself as the ultimate truth. Because none of us have it perfect. And so I kind of think about it like a bowl of spaghetti noodles, where these points are all closely tied to one another. This is all around less of me and more of us type of verbiage and just kind of like philosophy, really. But it holds huge weight with your audience, as it also speaks to your character as a person outside of the office, outside of your home office or content studio, like in my case here. So the way that I build my brand and the values that it represents, I'm letting you in on who I am as a person and the values that I represent, that I hold near and dear to my heart. And like I always preach when talking on the fundamentals of marketing, business, or anything, really, it's just be a good human to other humans. And with consistent effort, over time, you'll inevitably win. You'll achieve the success that you're after. It's just a matter of time. Focus on being a decent person. Like, don't be manipulative. Don't say things and then not back it up. Don't commit to things publicly and then not do it. Don't tell this person one thing and then this other person something completely else. There's no reason for us to snake, I guess, our way to the top, like in this like little conniving, like whatever type of approach. Like, just be a human that says, hey, like, this is what I'm here to do. This is my aim. This is how I'm going to go about it. I'm a constant student. I'm willing to be guided and coached. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm okay with what happens if I'm wrong about something, because I'm malleable. I want to grow. And as we do this with our business, you're going to build just insane levels of trust. And as we know, which is not the topic for today, but as we know, you don't need a huge audience to make a bunch of money or to be whatever successful means to you. Like, however you define that word, you don't need a huge following. You don't need to be ultra famous. You don't need to be on every single social media platform and putting out content everywhere all the time, 24/7, and getting a bunch of likes and comments and engagement on it. Okay. So the deeper the trust that you can have with your audience, the less that you need as far as the size of audience. But if you're able to build deep trust with a few people, the likelihood is there's a lot of other people out there, a lot of people in your target audience that just doesn't know about you yet. And once they do come across your content or the things that you're offering to the world, the problems that you solve, they're going to love you just as much as the OGs, as these first people that have started to follow you and latch on as either followers and or customers as well. And here's the bonus tip. We'll just go ahead and jump in to this bonus tip here. As your following begins to build, and say, okay, so now let's like hypothetically say instead of 0 followers, you have 1,000, or 0 email subscribers, newsletter subscribers, you have 500. As your following begins to build, and those are just numbers I pulled out of the sky, you can immediately repurpose the same exact approach that I've been sharing with you today, but instead of highlighting other niche specific professionals, you can simply just pull from your comment sections on your videos or email replies that you're getting to your newsletter. And so this is really cool because wherever people are engaging with your content, that's where you can go to grab other topic ideas or even just like the screenshots, and then you can include those comments in your upcoming content. Like, it's a no-brainer. It makes all the sense in the world. We're seeing larger accounts do this. But the hard thing, like we talked about earlier at the very, very beginning, is when you have no following, when you're not getting any engagement on the content that you're putting out there, or you have no customers. Unless we're just going to validate ourselves by just putting in the hard work of just, like, for me, use that as the example of weekly newsletter entries that I turn into a blog post that I use as kind of this loose script that's sitting in front of me right here in front of the camera. For podcasts and videos, I've been doing this every single week for a year. And it's a slow grind, and I do it because I enjoy it, and it's like super leverageable for my business. And I'm just proud of the work that I've created over time. So I'm not here to pat myself on the back. There's a lot of people that have been doing it way better than me for way longer than me. But when you have no followers, the best thing that we could do is use this UGC in a sense where we're pulling from accounts, other professionals in the space that have legitimate opinions on it, that have legitimate thoughts or ideas that we can leverage or piggyback off of as we create more content, because it instantly boosts our credibility when you're able to validate your thoughts with somebody else's similar thoughts as well. Or if you want to do contrarian takes on things, you can do that as well. Maybe there's a lot of tweets about like, off the top of my head, like the whole idea, like where people are constantly fighting for fairness. Like I completely despise that. I despise it. This idea of fair. Now, I think that we as people and as solo brands, you want to treat everybody as well as you can, but my big thing is, I don't really know how to word this. My big thing is like, whoever promised you fair. Like if you're rolling around whining like a little baby about something's not fair, like I'm sorry that you have the expectation that things should be fair or that they are fair, because you were not born into a world that is fair. There's so much unfairness happening. And then it plays into this concept of like luck. Like create your own luck, man. It's what we can control. Because I was saying this earlier between persona and reputation. Like there are things we can control and there are things we just can't control. Okay. So focus on the stuff that you can control and watch how you start to create your own luck for you. And maybe it takes you 10 years to start seeing the byproduct, the butterfly effect of the work that you put in. The few things that maybe you could control 10 years ago are now paying off for you now. So anyway, I have no idea how we got there, but like, oh yeah, contrarian takes. So like maybe I could write a whole article on fairness, or creating your own luck. And I could pull comments that are the opposite stance, the opposite viewpoint, and I could break down, as to why I disagree with it in a very constructive way, not in a pointing fingers and calling people lesser than, that they don't have it figured out and I do. That's not what it would be about. It would be about saying, okay, here's one argument and here's kind of why I don't agree with it, So you can go about this in a lot of different ways, but like I said, this is a method to instantly make your content seem more credible so that you can start to build that following, build that audience, build the trust with that audience. And then you're able to, like I said, with this bonus tip, you're going to have different angles to the same approach. Then you can pull from your following for content for UGC. You can pull from other creators in your niche or in your industry. You can pull that as well. And there are 3 major advantages to that we shared today. And these are all just baked. I have even baked some of this into this entry a little bit here, and you've probably seen it. I didn't really use anybody else's thoughts too much today, but I have in recent weeks because I've just kind of been experimenting and I'm finding it to be really enjoyable. And it's got all of those advantages. So by leveraging other people's shared thoughts and experiences, you can quickly boost your social proof. This makes you come across as more legitimate and studied up in the message that you're aiming to convey. It becomes an ultimate win-win. So if you're struggling to be taken seriously as a new one-person business, don't worry about it. There are simple ways to appear more legit, and using other people's content is one of them. So try it out and see how it works for you. And until next time, peace.